দুর্বৃত্ত ভবিষ্যতে এই বাংলাদেশের বুকে আর চেপে বসতে পারবে না।
Welcome everyone. Today we are honored to have with us Mr. Pinaki Bhattacharya, the largest political influencer from Bangladesh. Thank you for joining with us, Mr. Bhattacharya. It's a privilege to have you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Bhattacharya, you've become a polarizing figure with your outspoken commentary on both Bangladeshi politics and regional geopolitics. Let's start by addressing the broader shift we are witnessing today. You've said before that people seek truth where mainstream media fails. Alternative media seems to have triumphed globally over traditional outlets. I have two questions here. Why do you think that is, and how does Bangladesh fit into this global trend?
Well, it's entirely say that the alternate media triumphed over mainstream media in true sense. In mainstream media, during a fascist regime, they didn't have the liberty or luxury to be a decent voice. Those who reside abroad and had that liberty to be a decent voice. So they immediately attracted the mass segment and specifically the section of the people which was left behind. And the people who wanted to listen the voices which aligns to their trust and aspirations and dreams, they become popular. So that's how, the alternate media in Bangladesh, specifically YouTubers in Bangladesh, stepped in.
I feel like it's more of the political influencers as like you have actually made that happen during the fascist regime, if that's what you're trying to say.
Well, we had a kind of advantage. Had there been the different scenario that, I'm living in Bangladesh and I opened my YouTube channel, probably it would not be possible to be the Pinaki that I'm today, who used to live in Bangladesh at the same time, So I had the liberty, and all the people, all the YouTubers or all the influencers that you say living abroad had some liberty which the people or the mainstream media in Bangladesh didn't enjoy.
You have accused some major Bangladeshi outlets of serving state interests rather than public accountability. You have previously labeled some media entities like Pratham Alo and the Daily Star as enemies of the state. Could you elaborate on why you believe that this is a fair assessment?
Specifically, Pratham Alo and Daily Star, they were the key players in orchestrating the political shift during 1/11 era. They actively shaped the narratives that facilitated the rise of fascist regime, supported by India and America. And these outlets were instrumental strengthening Hasina's narratives during last 16 years. For instance, the Daily Star published fabricated articles in favor of Hasina regime. They portrayed the false or fictitious figures as a writer, and that's actually further cementing the position of the Hasina regime. And Pratham Alo, meanwhile, has a partnership with the Indian High Commission, has a partnership with the controversial Indian media outlet like ANI, and Mahfouz Anam, a key figure of Daily Star, openly supported Hasina's narrative during the revolution and sought to assist the government in fighting the revolutionaries, students. If Hasina is seen as the enemy of the state, why shouldn't Pratham Alo and Daily Star also be considered enemies of the state as well?
Many argue that your stance on outlets like Pratham Alo and the Daily Star, particularly your criticism that led to army deployment, is a contradiction in a sense that, how do you defend these actions while being based in a country that values freedom of the press?
Well, I believe that there was a clear overreaction on the part of Pratham Alo and government. Everybody knows that, the organizer of the program is me. And anyone could have reached out to me and directly if something had gone wrong. And I have taken the full responsibility. I still take the full responsibility of the program. We didn't resort to any violence. We did not resort to any chaos or mayhem. So why was the army called in the first place? Instead, they tortured one of our activists inside the Pratham Alo building. And protests against editorial policies of media outlets have occurred worldwide. not a single phenomenon that occurred only in Bangladesh. Why shouldn't we have the same right? Pratham Alo and Daily Star made a great mistake by responding with violence against protesters. And I have not forgotten that. And will return with even greater force. And this time, no one will be able to drive us away.
So here's an interesting paradox about you. As a Hindu or someone from the Hindu belief, you've somehow become one of the most beloved figures among many who identify as quote-unquote Islamists in Bangladesh. What does this say about you, or perhaps more importantly, about them?
Well, I have a different point of view, The first thing is that I'm not pretty sure whether I am favorite among Islamists. We must define what Islamist is according to your definition. But generally speaking, the common people of Bangladesh, they have trusted me and I have aligned with their dream and aspirations. Why it is so? There is a historic background, and there was a historic conflict between Hindus and Muslims in Bangladesh. And there is a historic roots of this conflict. And that if we go back to the permanent settlement, when the Hindus from West Bengal, they purchased the lands and the jomindaris here in Bangladesh, they become the ruler of land, the Muslim peasants and Hindu rulers. According to Marxist theory, whenever you have oppressor and oppressed, there is a class struggle. So the class struggle in Bangladesh, that was reflected as a tension between two religions, because the oppressed and oppressors belong to two different religions. So that's how it originated. And afterwards, while the creation of Bangladesh and later on the army regime, the Hindus largely aligned with pro-army narratives, always. I was one of them. I used to be a member of CPB, means Communist Party of Bangladesh, and Communist Party historically was aligned with Army League, and even they merged themselves into Army League while creating Bakshal. It was quite natural that I will resonate the same history and the same narratives afterwards. But what I believe, and I would like to say that trained as a good communist, and a good communist should be able to identify the fascist regime. And I was very correct in identifying Sina as fascist, although she was my ally during 90s movement, and she was actually my leader. I was a student leader at Rajshahi Medical College, and we were struggling under the umbrella of 8-party, and CPB was part of 8-party alliance, and I was a member of 8-party alliance. So in that sense, I was a comrade of Sheikh Hasina. But when she turned fascist, and I was very correct in identifying her a fascist, although my first struggle was inside the party, inside the Communist Party. And I wanted to convince my party comrades that, this is a fascist regime and we must fight her politically. But I failed. And not only failed, I was expelled from the party for raising that voice that we must align with the aspiration of the common people and people who are fighting this fascist regime. Well, there had been very few Hindu voices that stood alongside with the forces who were fighting fascist forces. So it was a kind of a shock for everyone, my previous allies or my previous party comrades, and also the common Muslim community of Bangladesh. They had some disbelief or distrust that, this person is bizarre, is acting bizarrely. And, what he has been telling, we don't usually listen such voices from Hindu community. Over time, with the struggle, I should not say sacrifice, but to some extent, I was persecuted and I had to leave my country. And they have seen me and consistent in my rhetoric, in my fights, and they have accepted me as a comrade. And that's how I gained the position. It might sound bizarre, but what I said, I am very particular about that. I was trained as a good communist. And that's how I identified a true fascist regime very clearly.
This question is about your work actually. Your work involves a lot of breaking news, exposes, revealing hidden truths. Like, can you walk us through your edit cycle very briefly? And also, like, how do you manage to keep your contents accurate? Very briefly, sir.
Well, in fact, I do not expose people, I don't have any breaking news. What I do, I create narratives, and I challenge the narratives created and pursued by the mainstream media and the political parties, means the Hasina regime. So that was my expertise. To be precise and to be frank, I do get scoop newses, and but that's not my priority. I never worked on such issues. If I get something, I refer it to Kanak Sarwar or Ilyas. What I consciously do, it's I create narratives and alternate narratives. So that's my expertise. And in creating all these alternative narratives, I rely on published articles, published stories, and local newspaper as such. And in regards to editing cycle, I do have very little time, and I do have my full-time job. I'm doing my PhD, and I'm writing books and novels. I have to read, and I have my family, and I have to spend time with my family, and I have to socialize. All these priorities, and come back to my apartment. It's already too late. It's about 9 to 10 p.m. in the night. So after taking shower, I start reading all these things that happened this day. Then I start writing my script, and it spans around 3 to 4 hours. And then I record my episode, and I share that recorded episode with my editor late night, or rather I should say early morning, very early morning. So usually at 2:30 to 3 a.m. in the morning, I share my content with my editor. So who lives in Asia, and so that's why when I go to sleep, and he can start working on my piece. That's how things work. If the content is do not exceed more than 15 minutes, can supply me back the edited version next morning by around noon, and I can release it that day. Usually it takes a day because I do have lots of reference, and I have to recheck the content. I release my videos every alternate day. But if it is very special, I try to keep it within 10 to 15 minutes, and I try to release that on the same day. So that's my editing cycle. In regards to authenticity, I told you that I rely on published media, and that's how I work. And I show all the contents that I refer in my video on my screen, so that people can recheck all the contents. But sometimes I commit mistakes, and it's not the rate is not very high. So far, I've retracted 2 videos only out of more than 1,000 videos. So that's how I manage. I do not have a big team. I am me and my editor. That's it. And my editor is a competent guy, and he checks the reference always and give me feedback that the thing that you have said, it's probably wrong, and we have to delete that segment and so on. So that's how I manage.
As you say that if there is any sort of misinformation there, what you do is you basically retract. But if it has been shared widely around the audience, then what would you do?
I apologize for that mistake, and that's the standard procedure. All the news medias, they commit mistakes, and that's how they respond to this mistake, and the process they follow. That's the part I cannot do much about it without correcting my previous stand again and again in Facebook, in YouTube, in my next episode. So it happened twice. Out of 2, I had to retract 2 out of more than thousands of my episodes. So if you look at the percentage, it's very nominal and at an acceptable range that the mistakes other medias commit.
Mr. Bhattacharya, I'd like you to tell us very briefly, that is, you face legal challenges under the Cyber Security Act and the Digital Security Act, accused of spreading anti-state propaganda. With these acts now undergoing changes, how do you view this shift? Like, do you believe these reforms will address concerns about freedom of speech and prevent misuse? Or do you see them as another layer of state control? Very briefly.
Well, of course, it was unnecessary. The government reached out to me for waiting the document. I'm looking at the document right now. My initial response is that it was unnecessary. It's another version of that draconian act of DSA for which I was a victim. And I cannot tell you how many cases was lost against me. Probably more than 20. And I don't count it anymore. It has to be stopped, and it's an unnecessary work, and that government put their effort to formulate that. It was completely unnecessary.
Mr. Bhattacharya, let's talk about this campaign that you have that's called the India Out campaign. It has raised strong opinions on both sides, with some viewing it as a fight for sovereignty and others as a threat to the regional stability. What motivated your involvement in this movement, and how would you respond to the critics?
My political stand in regards to India is very clear. I consider India as a threat to our sovereignty and regional stability. Why it is so? So, India's perspective regarding Bangladesh, that is rooted into the perception of India about Bangladesh. So how do they perceive Bangladesh as a neighbor? So they don't perceive us as a neighbor, good neighbor. Rather, they perceive us as a security threat. And being a Muslim majority country and living beside a big country which is dominated by Hindutva-Vadi fascist regime is very challenging, and it's very risky. So that's how India always tried to influence our politics and try to align with the power who is more friendly to India, whom they consider as less threat to their security. So that's why I wanted to raise a voice that we should take this as a challenge, and we should let them know that the political stand that India is taking for Bangladesh is wrong, and all the strategies they are taking for Bangladesh are basically biased and wrong and faulty. So that's the message I wanted to give. And I knew that there is a conducive environment inside the country that we can launch a campaign which can propagate that sense of discontent. And we had been very successful in propagating that sense of discontent with our campaign. Whatever they perceive about our campaign doesn't matter. We had been very successful in creating that narrative that the policy that India is pursuing for Bangladesh is wrong and faulty, and people don't like it.
We've heard you offer sharp critiques of many institutions, but I want to ask you this. What about your own role in this ecosystem? Can you offer any self-criticism regarding your approach or influence within alternative media?
What I can tell you that, which might be perceived as a weakness of mine, my expression is sometimes very aggressive. And I might look very angry and very assertive sometimes. Well, that's me. And people may perceive that, it might propagate some tension and create some anarchy. And, I might agitate the mob, and they might engage in mayhem by watching my videos. But that's me. That is also my strength. I can motivate people on many things. And that's why I don't want to, change my attitude on the screen. Another critic is that, I use profanities and slang language in my videos. And I use a very, very strong provincial accent in my videos. Well, that has got some kind of rationale behind it. I wanted to create my screen personality by combining two very prominent figures. One is Hero Alam, who speaks my language from Bogura, and another is Sefuda. Sefuda is a phenomenon to me. So let me tell you one very interesting story. When my son used to go to school, Scholastica, I observed that Sefuda was extremely popular among the students. And there had been an app, they developed an app which stored all the slangs that Sefuda used. And they used to combine all those and started playing. And all these, what should I say, newly permutated and combined new kind of slangs from the stores of Sefuda's slang. So that's how I started to observe that, Sefuda is becoming a phenomenon among the young people. And we have observed that phenomenon on the streets when during 2018, during the road safety movement, that, they chanted a slogan, Pulish kon chater bal. We never imagined that, we could use, I was in politics. I was a student leader. We never imagined that we could use a slang in the political slogan. That was an eye-opener for me, that slang has a political language and slang is extremely powerful against fascists. So that's how I took up that personality of Sefuda. And regarding Hero Alam, and at the same time, Hero Alam becoming popular among all the sections of the people. And people didn't take him very seriously, but he was popular. So, and he used very strong accent. So then I realized that, although I'm not very good at slang, I had to learn all these stuffs. But I know the language of Bogra. I was born in Bogra and I used to speak Bogra language, Bogra accent very well. So it was not very difficult for me to combine these two and to create that personality of Pinaki on the screen, which is a combination of Hero Alam, Sefuda, with what should I say, the education, the background, the training, and the learning that I have. So
you would say that the Pinaki Bhattacharya that we see on screen, that persona and the Pinaki Bhattacharya in real life are completely two different persons or personalities.
What do you think? You see a different Pinaki right now,
Of course I do, yes.
So, yes.
Okay, thank you for that insight. But do you believe that your style of activism has its limitation? And if so, how can alternative media evolve to become more constructive rather than just a counter narrative?
I'm not pretty sure whether I will continue to be the same Pinaki on the screen. So it will take some time to reflect on and to create another version of Pinaki. I'm not pretty sure. I need to think and I need to go through a trial and error phase. Let's see. Well, for a political activist who works for a political change, he seeks for communication channel. He seeks for channels to communicate his audience, his constituency. So that's how I communicate with my people. And that's how I communicate with the larger audience in Bangladesh. Well, I believe that, my episodes are watched and viewed by, we say that, the low socioeconomic class people. And I'm not very celebrated and liked by upper section of the community, the elites. And I say, and I don't like elites, to be very frank. In the core of my heart, I am still a communist, and whatever I do to empower the poor people, less privileged people. It's very difficult to be popular among less privileged people and among all the elites. So it's two different contradictory classes. And I choose to be with poor people. So that's my conscious choice.
You're part of a broader alternative media movement, right? And so how would you describe the community among individuals like yourself, like Mr. Elias or like Mr. Zulkarnain Sair? How much collaboration takes place between you all in your respective campaigns and messaging?
I have a very strong collaboration with Elias. Collaboration means I discuss things with him and try to take a common stance on a very important political issues. And Elias sometimes shares with me that the kind of episodes he is working on. and we exchange informations. So that collaboration is very strong. Well, we do have different opinions on things, and we choose to disagree on these. And well, with Sami, I have a loose kind of collaboration. I don't think that I have a very strong collaboration with Sami, but I have some kind of collaboration with Sami, of course. The areas where Sami works is not my areas of expertise. So that's why the areas for collaboration is very limited. I do collaborate with other people who may not be very prominent, but I do collaborate. I watch the narratives pursued by many popular YouTubers like Jahid. I watch him very well. He's a very talented YouTuber. And I watch the narratives of Kanak Sarwar. And I also watch the narratives of Colonel Mustafiz. And I also have collaboration with anti-fascist YouTubers and anti-fascist activists.
Alternative media personalities as yourself, right?
Yes. So the collaboration at a different level, with everyone. So the most prominent collaboration that I have with Ilyas.
Mr. Bhattacharya, this is going to be one of our last questions for you. So it's going to be a little bit broad. So you've been very vocal in your criticisms of the former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and her government. And you have said like two of the most striking things about her. Number one, referring to her as Katal Rani and as India's stooge. So where does this phrase Katal Rani come from, and does it have some sort of a sensitivity edge to it, or is it insulting to the woman?
From where did I derive that term Katal Rani? She once advocated using katal as an alternative to meat. That's how I derived that stuff, katal. And she is a dictator, so I joined that Rani with Katal, and I made a narrative of Katal Rani. Well, in regards to sensitivity to women, so let me explain that I was born in a Hindu family, and I was raised and grown up in a culture where I used to worship all the Devis who were women. Ma Durga, Ma Kali, Ma Saraswati. So that's how my psyche was developed, worshipping women. I don't have any reservation in bowing down to women. I culturally worship them, and I consider them as a source of power and as a spirit that can be worshipped. But Sheikh Hasina shattered my imagination. Initially, it was extremely difficult for me to conceive that a lady can be so tyrant and so barbaric, and that's the price that she has to pay. And it's not Hasina as woman that she's paying the price. It's the Hasina who shattered my perception about woman. She must pay. So it's not about woman, it's about Hasina. She said openly that what she has given to India, India won't never forget. We really want to know that what she gave to India. And her foreign minister openly said that the relation that we enjoy is like husband and wife. So why we are a different state? Because we do have different interests than India. So that's why we are a different state. Two states can never be a friend, and two states can never exist as husband and wife. So that's how she made Bangladesh as a vassal state of India.
Well, Mr. Bhattacharya, this would be our last question for this episode. That is, we've seen that Amar Desh, or My Country, is starting. Few new outlets are popping up like ourselves, the Centrist Nation platform. What is your suggestion for us?
Well, the first thing is that, a phenomenon that I realized and I understood during my last 3 years of YouTubing. So that relates to that editing cycle that you were referring to, that I release my episodes one every alternate day. So the people take a stand when the event is evolving, when the evil is in making. So that's where the people's narrative takes a shape. So That's why it's extremely important that you reach out to your audience when the thing is happening, the situation is unfolding. So that's the point where you have the maximum impact of your episode in creating the narrative. So once it is formed, it's extremely difficult to shift. But during that event, it's really easy to shape the people's perception and create the alternate narrative. So I suggest all the alternate medias that Elias does that very carefully. So that's why he is very powerful. Whenever something happens, he appears on live and he starts discussing with people. So that's the area where Elias could manage the people's perception very well. You are recording episodes and you are releasing episodes after certain point of time, but I believe that had it been live, you should have some live events, like let's imagine that secretariat was burning, and during that period you engage some other experts in a live session and start to create a narrative that you want to pursue. So that's how you could thrive, and you really have influence on creating narratives. And the second thing is that actually related to your objective of your channel. So if you want to build an alternate narratives, you have to debunk all the myths that has been accumulated so far. So you could have some kind of episodes that will debunk all the myths, and that's how you engage with broader audience, and you build a strong base for your narratives for the future. That's the two penny advice that I can give you right now.
Mr. Bhattacharya, it was an absolute pleasure having you with us today. Thank you.
You are always welcome.